right, so have you ever felt like you're drowning in information?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Like, seriously, every time I open my news feed or try to read,
Mm.
like a long article, I'm just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's just too much. And presentations, forget about it. If I see one more wall of text and bullet points,
Hmm.
I think my brain might actually melt.
I feel you.
But the thing is, we need this information, right?
Right.
Like, we have to stay informed. We have to learn new things. So for this deep dive, we're going to look at how we can actually kind of hack our brains
Interesting.
to make it easier to not just like passively absorb all this information, but to really understand it and remember it.
Okay.
And we're going to be talking about the power of visuals and summaries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in prepping for this, I was actually amazed by some of the research out there about how our brains are actually wired to process information.
It's funny because a lot of people think that using visuals is just about making things look pretty, but it's really about working with how our brains are naturally wired. Think about it. Like for most of human history, we relied on visuals to survive. Recognizing predators, finding food, navigating.
Right.
Our brains became incredibly efficient at processing that kind of visual information.
So you're saying that like we're all visual learners on some level.
Absolutely. I mean, some people might have a stronger preference for it, but in general, our brains can process images way faster than text. And
Oh.
visual cues, they actually help us create stronger memories, too.
Oh, wow.
It's like creating a mental shortcut.
Okay, that's super interesting. So visuals are obviously key.
Yeah.
But where do summaries fit into all of this?
So a visual summary is essentially a way to take, all that complex information and distill it down into these like bite-sized pieces,
Okay.
visual chunks that our brains can grasp way more easily.
Like a blueprint.
Exactly. It's like a blueprint for understanding.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So are we talking about things like bullet points?
Yeah.
And like simple graphics?
Yes.
Can you break down for us like, different types of visual summaries and how they can be helpful?
Sure. So bullet points are like your classic way to organize information.
Right.
Right. You break things down into a hierarchy,
Yeah.
You see the main ideas, the supporting points. It's perfect for notes, presentations, really anything where you need to organize your thoughts.
Okay, and when you say simple graphics, you're not saying that we need to be like graphic designers to use them effectively.
Not at all.
Okay, good.
No, not at all. It's really about, using visuals strategically.
Uh-huh.
Like you could use a flowchart to show process or icons to represent, different ideas or concepts.
Oh, wait.
And even, a simple bar graph can make data comparisons so much easier than having to like wade through rows and rows of numbers.
Yeah, that's true. Charts and graphs, I actually do like those.
They are helpful.
So it sounds like we've got our visual toolbox, but what about like using these tools effectively? Because I've definitely sat through some presentations where people just throw a bunch of random visuals on the slides and it ends up just being like more confusing.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. Our sources actually have some great tips
Okay.
for making sure your summaries actually work. And the first one, it sounds obvious, but it's so important.
Okay.
Keep it clean, keep it simple.
Less is more.
Less is more, exactly.
Yeah.
Too much clutter, it just defeats the purpose.
Right.
So think clear fonts, plenty of white space, and really try to focus on just the most essential information.
Right, because you want your visuals to guide people, right?
Exactly.
Not overwhelm them.
You got it.
And speaking of essential information, I think another tip that really stood out to me from the research was choosing key points, like only the key points.
Yes.
Because it's so tempting to try to get everything in there.
Oh, I know.
Right. But that just defeats the whole point of a summary in the first place.
Yeah. It's like, you have to be ruthless.
Yes. Ruthless editing.
Exactly. What's the core message here? What
Yeah.
do people absolutely need to know?
Yes. And focus on that.
That's it.
Okay, I like that. And that leads us to the next tip, which is about consistency.
Oh, yeah. Good one.
So talk to me about visual consistency. Like, why is it so important?
Okay, so think about branding, like
Yeah.
big companies.
Yeah.
They spend tons of money developing a consistent visual identity
Right?
because it helps people recognize them, it builds trust.
Yeah.
So it's the same with visual summaries. If you use like a consistent color scheme, font style, and overall visual approach, it looks professional and it makes the information so much easier for the viewer to follow.
Makes sense. This is really starting to click for me.
Good.
And it actually reminds me of the study I read about where researchers presented complex financial data to two different groups of people.
Oh, interesting.
And one group got a traditional text-heavy report, you know?
Yeah.
And the other group got a version with charts and graphs.
Okay.
So guess which group understood the information better?
I'm going to go with the charts and graphs.
Yes.
Okay.
The group with the visuals. They not only understood it better, but they remembered it longer too.
Makes sense, right?
Total sense.
Yeah.
It all comes back to how our brains actually work.
And what I find really exciting about all of this is that it's not just about presenting information to others.
Oh, okay.
It's also an incredibly powerful tool for learning and understanding things ourselves.
Oh.
Like, when we take the time to actually create a visual summary of something, it forces us to really engage with that material on a deeper level.
Yeah.
You start making connections that you might have missed otherwise.
That's so true. I'm totally on board with that. And actually, you know what? I have a challenge for all of our listeners.
Okay, I like a challenge.
Pick a topic that you are currently trying to learn. It could be something you're reading or something you're studying for work.
Okay.
And try creating a visual summary of it. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a way to represent the key information visually.
Right.
You might be surprised how much clearer that information becomes in your own mind when you do that.
I love that challenge. It really gets you thinking, you know? Like, what if we all started to think more visually in, like, all areas of our lives?
Yeah.
How would that change the way we communicate, the way we learn, the way we solve problems? It's a pretty powerful idea, right?
Definitely something to think about.
It is.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.